For more than a decade, something terrifying was happening in South Central Los Angeles. Between 1987 and 1998, women were being found dead in alleys, behind dumpsters, and near abandoned buildings. They had all been strangled. Most of them were partially clothed, their bodies discarded as if they didn't matter. The victims shared striking similarities. They were African American women, many struggling with addiction or homelessness, working the streets to survive. Their ages ranged from their early 20s to mid-40s, and nearly every murder happened within a 5-mile radius of downtown Los Angeles. For years, the city had no idea that a serial killer was hunting these women. Eventually, the man responsible would be known as the South Side Slayer. His real name was Chester Dwayne Turner, and investigators would later discover that he had murdered at least 14 women, but many believe the true number could be much higher. What makes this case even more disturbing is that Turner wasn't hiding in the shadows. He lived among his victims. He knew many of them personally. Police even encountered him multiple times over the years, yet somehow the warning signs were ignored. His own classmates had once given him a nickname that now feels chilling in hindsight, Chester the Molester, and for years, no one stopped him. The story begins in March 1987. 21-year-old Diane Johnson was found dead in a construction area near the 110 freeway in downtown Los Angeles. She had been manually strangled. Someone had wrapped their hands around her throat and squeezed until she died. The medical examiner noted that manual strangulation takes time, minutes. Diane would have been conscious for most of it. She fought desperately to survive. Her hands showed defensive wounds, proof that she resisted with everything she had. Investigators also discovered that she had been sexually assaulted before her death. Semen was collected from the scene and carefully preserved. But in 1987, DNA technology was still in its infancy. There was no national database to compare it against, so the evidence was stored away, and Diane's murder became just another unsolved case in a city overwhelmed with violence. 7 months later, in October 1987, another body was discovered. A woman named Annette Ernest was found along a roadside in South Central Los Angeles. Her exact age was unknown. She had lived on the streets for years. Investigators were only able to identify her through fingerprints. But the similarities between the two murders were disturbing. Same area, same victim profile, same method, manual strangulation. And once again, the body was left partially clothed in a semi-public location. Still, the cases weren't officially connected. At the time, Los Angeles was experiencing an explosion of violence. The crack cocaine epidemic had devastated entire neighborhoods. Homicide rates were soaring, reaching nearly 2,000 murders per year. Police departments were overwhelmed, and victims like Diane and Annette were often treated as low priority. 2 years later, in 1999, another woman was found murdered. Her name was Anita Barrera, a 31-year-old woman discovered outside a garage near Figueroa Street. The area was notorious for prostitution and drug activity. Anita had been strangled and sexually assaulted. Her body was left in plain sight. Within weeks, another woman was found dead, Regina Washington. She had been strangled in a garage off the same street. Just like the others, she was found partially clothed. But Regina's case carried an additional tragedy. She was 6 months pregnant. The killer had strangled a pregnant woman without hesitation. By this point, investigators could no longer ignore the pattern. 4 murders, nearly identical circumstances. Law enforcement finally formed a special task force. They called it the South Side Slayer Task Force. At its peak, the unit included 50 investigators. They interviewed hundreds of people. They collected evidence and documented every detail. But they had no suspect. And without a functioning DNA database, they had no way to identify the killer. All they could do was wait for science to catch up. Meanwhile, the murders continued. Women like Andrea Triplett and Desiree Washington were discovered dead near the same Figueroa Street corridor. Each time, the method was nearly identical: strangulation, sexual assault, bodies left in alleys or garages. Investigators knew they were dealing with one offender, but resources were shrinking. By the early 1990s, the task force had been reduced to just 15 investigators. The city was battling gang wars, drug violence, and rising homicide rates. The serial killer slipped further into the background, and the murders went on. Then came February 3, 1998. A 24-year-old woman named Paula Vance was walking through an alley shortly after 2 a.m. What she didn't know was that a security camera had recently been installed nearby. The camera was meant to catch people dumping trash illegally, but that night it captured something far more disturbing. The footage shows Paula stopping near a dumpster. Moments later, a large man suddenly appears. He grabs her from behind. He forces her to the ground. For nearly 8 minutes, the camera records the horrifying attack. The man's face isn't visible, but one thing stands out immediately: his size. He appears to be well over 6 feet tall, weighing more than 200 pounds. After the attack, he calmly stands up and walks away. No panic, no rush, just quiet confidence, as if he knows he'll never be caught. After Brenda Breeze, another victim found in 1998, the killings seemed to stop. For 4 years, there were no new victims connected to the pattern. The task force eventually disbanded. The case went cold. But then, in March 2002, everything changed. A woman named Maria Martinez was staying at the Downtown Women's Center homeless shelter. One night, she stepped outside. She saw a man she recognized from the shelter. He was large, with a distinctive scar on his cheek. He asked her for a cigarette, then a light. As she handed it to him, he suddenly grabbed her and dragged her behind a dumpster. For nearly 2 hours, he assaulted her. After it was over, he issued a chilling warning. If she went to the police, he would kill her. But Maria Martinez did something incredibly brave. She went straight to the police. At the hospital, investigators collected DNA evidence. This time, the DNA was entered into the National CODIS database. When the results came back, the case finally exploded open. The DNA matched evidence from multiple unsolved murders, one after another: Diane Johnson, Annette Ernest, Anita Barrera, Regina Washington, and many more, all connected to the same man, Chester Dwayne Turner. Police quickly pulled Turner's booking records. His physical description matched the man in the surveillance footage: 6 feet 2 inches, over 200 pounds, and he had a scar on his left cheek. Officers located him at a homeless shelter. He was found hiding inside a shower stall. He was arrested without incident. But investigators soon discovered something even shocking. A man named David Allen Jones, who was mentally disabled, had previously been wrongfully convicted for 3 of the murders. When the DNA was retested, the truth became undeniable. Those murders were committed by Chester Turner. Jones was innocent. He was later released and awarded $750,000 in compensation, but years of his life had already been lost. In 2007, Chester Turner finally stood trial. Prosecutors presented overwhelming DNA evidence linking him to multiple victims. They also showed the jury the Paula Vance surveillance footage. Even though the attacker's face wasn't visible, the video showed the brutal method Turner used. The jury deliberated for less than 2 days. They returned a verdict: guilty on all counts. Turner was sentenced to death for multiple murders. Today, Chester Dwayne Turner sits on death row at San Quentin State Prison. However, due to California's ongoing moratorium on executions, he will likely spend the rest of his life behind bars. Investigators believe that the 14 confirmed victims may be representing a fraction of the true total. During the crack cocaine epidemic, many vulnerable women disappeared without ever being reported missing. And somewhere in those forgotten cases may lie more victims of the South Side Slayer.